looking at I'm hoping that in this session, you will get just some ideas. So those are 2 books that I wrote. And obviously, if I'm doing a session like this, I'm going to tell you about them. Teacher in the Cupboard is the most recent one. And it's basically me as a teacher. I'm a problem solver. That's what I like to do. And so when it came to teaching online, I was asked by my Academy Trust if I would do all of the online lessons for English for our Academy Trust. And my first thing that I thought was absolutely not. No, I am not a digital teacher. I teach with paper and pens and I am petrified. But I did it. And I thought, here's another problem that I need to solve. And these are some of the problems that I came up against. So first of all, I'm just going to see how this works because I have obviously just joined the chat and I'm just going to see if you're all out there. In the chat box, please, first of all, just have a think for yourself. When you're working online with your students, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about your students' behaviour in online lessons, what would that be? So if you could, for me, please, in the chat box, time to comment, pop your answers in there. So if you could wave a magic wand, think about the things that really do your head in. And if you just change that, yeah, if you could just change that, what would it be? Brilliant, I can see. Thank you, Neil, straight in there. And Helen as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're flying in now. Brilliant. So I've got, just read a couple of the first ones out here. We've got turn their cameras on. Yeah. Get them to attend, actually get involved, lack of engagement, take all distractions away, a bit more trust, or all to engage, and giving feedback, and really similar ones that we had. So it's like,
if I go here, it's about
what's that?
how would you rate the barriers to
it's Wayne.
And the code is
Wayne.
256.
Thank you. There we go. Right, so I'm hopefully going to pick up on a few of those that you've put in there because they're all similar things that I come up against as well. So I want to explore my experiences going from barely using a computer in lessons to making learning online purposeful. And a lot of the issues that you face are faced too. So a couple of those definitely we're going to look at. And the purpose of that was to try and make online learning purposeful when bubbles go down. So hopefully you're going to get some ideas. Now, here's my issue number 1. So I got a lot of this when I was getting, in the comments. I wasn't getting answers to questions. I was getting things like, am I supposed to write this down, miss? So how might we help our students know what to do and when to do it? I don't know if you noticed in my question, I had those bubbles. And I solved this problem of what am I supposed to be doing in this moment by really thinking about what I wanted the students to be doing in that moment. And so if I just wanted them to listen, I had this big get ready to comment as you listen. And what that meant was that there was something coming up which expected them to put their ideas in the comment box. You can see I'm using 2 computers at the moment because when I was presenting, my students' comments were coming in over here and I can actually use those comments. But if you're just presenting, you can't see the comments. You have to keep coming in and out. So having that extra resource here really useful as well. Time to comment meant that they had to get their comments in really fast. We had a 20-second delay on our comments. So I can see your comments coming in real time. But for the students I was working with, because I was working across all of our academies, it could be that I had 2,000 students online at one time. So we couldn't get them all into the Google Meet. And so we used Google Sheets instead. So I could see their spreadsheet of comments coming in over here. So they knew when it was time to comment, we had a 20-second delay. They had to get the comments in quickly, but I gave them that time to think. We had just think for yourself and also that pen work with me at the side. So instead of asking, am I supposed to write that down, miss? Students started to be able to see exactly what it was that they were expected to do in that moment. So think for yourself, if you've got any students that aren't doing the right thing in that moment, think how we can get it across really clearly what's expected for them to do. Here's another issue. So like I said, I'm just going through, I hope this is all right. I'm going through just sort of the issues that I had and then some ways that I've solved it and then time for questions at the end. So how might we use the first few moments to hook them into the learning? So engagement was one that we had there. Nicola was saying, lack of engagement, not being focused. And so not all the students were engaging in the session. We'd have students that logged on, but then once they were in, there was no comments coming in from them, certainly weren't answering live. If we did live sessions with them, as I do with the individual academies, they just wouldn't turn on their mics. They didn't want to comment. And so I had that same person commenting over and over, thinking about how we might use those first few moments to hook them into the learning. Right, can you do me a favour? Can we use the comments again? Can you describe Lucy in 3 words for me, please? So get ready to comment, but I haven't got the time to comment. It's time to comment right now, okay? Can you describe little Lucy for me, please, in 3 words? Do that for me now. So you're looking at this image. Describe Lucy for me in 3 words. Lovely. Rachel, you're the winner. First one in there. Helen, second place. Fabulous. And so we're getting thoughtful, dreaming, young, blonde, innocent. Well, in this lesson, Lucy died, and they actually had to go back in a time machine and stop somebody from drink driving. And so I was using this first bit, such an easy thing for the students to get involved with, right? And it's an image and a question, and then the expectation is that every student comments at that point. And it's something so easy that the students aren't worrying about whether they get that answer wrong. So I was using this, but it had purpose in the lesson. So it was a persuasive writing lesson. It was a fictional lesson. But we were being able to recognize what a great speech opening was. And we were writing our own speeches, and we were just using this hook of Lucy. So one of the most powerful things that we had was our voice. And so again, thinking about how if they didn't comment, their voice wasn't being used, and how we were going to save Lucy. So one of the ways we're solving that problem of engagement is really thinking about what is that first task that you set them. Does it set them up for a fall? Does it scare them? Does it, is it so simple that everybody can get engaged, but not so simple that it doesn't lead to great learning outcomes? So try to think really carefully about the tasks that you're opening your online learning lessons with. I always started with a thinking question. So you can answer this one if you like, because it's nice to know what people's favourite characters are. But again, it's a question that is really easy. Everybody wants to answer, and it links in with the students as well. So it's trying to find, I mean, every subject's different, and I know for English we can find quite easy ways to link it to real life. But if we're opening our sessions with something that isn't going to scare our students, it's a desirable difficulty that is a really clear answer so that they're not confused about what they have to do. It can be one way to just get them hooked in straight away. And again, that question had real purpose in the lesson because it was all about characterization and bringing characters to life. So we had to look at our favorite characters to be able to bring the characters that we were going to create to life. Also, think about what they're doing during the session and after the session. So in a live session, it's really difficult unless you just all sit in silence for 15 minutes to do that same work as you would do in the classroom, where you sit back and allow them to get on with it. And with me not having the students live, I did have them live, but I had them, you know, I couldn't see the students and exactly what they were doing. A lot of my work was about modeling. So I was exploring examples in the session and modeling, but the expectation was that after the session, we would have a go ourselves. So everything that I did then had a task which expected them to do the same thing, but different. So in the live session, I was thinking about, all right, how can I show them what to do? How can I show them the best example and really model it and build up the steps? But then after the session, what can I set for them that they can actually sit where they haven't got the computer as a distraction, they haven't got me speaking as a distraction and other students in the room. They can sit by themselves and create that. And also they've got that expectation, the model answer, so they know exactly what is expected of them as well. So again, openings of lessons, really think about, you know, is it a desirable difficulty? Is it something that everybody can get involved with? Are you thinking about what you are expecting them to do in the session? And I had to stop thinking about it being exactly what was in the classroom. I had to start thinking about the realities of what we had online and what the best thing that I could do with it was. Also, again, right, that's really similar, but I like to use, like real life examples. So I've got my Nana in here, but how might we view social isolation differently? So again, just another really simple question, but by bringing Nana Ellen into it, the students in later lessons were always asking how Nana Ellen was, just keeping it really nice. But given the illusion of choice was a really good one, because actually every session that I created, I had the outcome, and you'll see it in a little bit because I'm going to show you the setup that I had, which isn't what I've got now because I'm busy moving house today. So I've just got boxes everywhere today. But up here, I had everything that I possibly could produce in the lesson. And so I asked the students to vote for my audience that I was going to model an answer for. And so Sammy D's my son and Nana Ellen, and we were writing a story, but who's going to be my audience? And because I gave them the choice over it, they felt like they owned that story. It was something that they'd created. In reality, I'd planned for both stories. So they weren't really given the choice, but they sort of were. So think about what choices you can give them as well so that they can own the learning in that session. So it's not just all about your voice, all about you, and thinking about how you can bring them in.
Okay, we're just going to stop sharing then.
Oh, all right. Here's an example of my lesson open. I hope you can hear this one. Hopefully you can. So here's an example of one of my lessons.
Good morning, everyone. Mrs. Ashes here again. Welcome back to English. I hope everybody's out there. Now, Miss Jesson actually gave you the beginning of a joke. I'm waiting for the answers to this joke coming in. So, what is an English teacher's favourite type of tree? We were looking at trees yesterday. What's the answer? Of course, it's a poetry. Welcome back, where the best jokes in the world are. Nat.
So some things to think about, right? Just because you're teaching remotely doesn't mean to say that you have to lose you. And I think at the beginning, I really did feel like a bit of a robot. And I felt like the lessons that I would teach in school, it was really difficult to turn that into online. And so I try to think about, what's my USP as a teacher? What are the things that I love to do already? And how can I continue to do that? And so, the lesson openings, I already do that, thinking about their desirable difficulty, bringing them into that lesson. And so that's really easily transferable to online. I already, in my lessons, use my family all of the time. They know about it. I've got full permission. But again, it's that personal touch that the students are used to from me, and I'm bringing it into the online lesson as well. And we worked, there was myself and, sorry, there was the other computer's talking to us. There was myself and a maths teacher, and the maths lesson was first and the English lesson was second. So they had a 15-minute gap between. And we tried to use the end of her lesson and the beginning of mine and thinking about a question she could ask that I could then follow up. So trying to, keep the students online to see whether what they said was brought into the beginning of my lesson. And again, I always work with all of the other teachers. So if there are other teachers that are teaching your group before you, or other teachers that are doing similar things, how can you link that together? So just because you're teaching online doesn't mean to say that you've lost you. And what should you do? What could you keep that you feel like you've lost because it's a screen and not live students? Because there are things there. So you can see there, crap jokes, for example, still there, but all with purpose. All right, how might we keep the quality high? So the students lose motivation and don't seem to do the same quality of work at home. The quality of work is all about the model. So if you expect something from them, for example, if you expect them to write at length, and what they're doing at home is maybe writing a couple of sentences, because they haven't got that model. Think about really showing them what's expected without doing the work for them. So try and pick a question that's similar, or just have something to show them, but also make sure that we praise the students. One interesting thing that came out of this was, obviously I know pip and rip, right? Praise in public and reprimand in private. And in a classroom, that's something that I would do. Praise in public, I really love what you're doing over there. The way that you're working together as a group is absolutely fantastic. I can see somebody's messing about over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quiet word. We need to not do that. There's going to be a consequence in a minute. Okay, excellent, fantastic, wonderful. And then we move on. So praise in public and reprimand in private, but by using not the live chat, but by using the by using the Google Docs instead of the live chat, the other students couldn't see what anybody else had said. So they only had access to their own messages. So that was really interesting, because at the very beginning, I got really silly responses in there, but I could completely ignore those silly responses. They might hurt me in here, but nobody knew that. But those silly responses were just not getting any airtime. And the responses that were perfect were exactly what I was looking for. I could read the name out, so I could be like, Karen Wright, that was a wonderful response that you gave me there. The reason why it was wonderful was this, this, and this. And so the students are only hearing the praise in public. And that turned into, after about 3 sessions, I didn't get any more silly responses. All I got was the positive and the exactly what I was looking for. So that was a really interesting one. But you can see I also had my praise board behind me. It was year 11s I was working with. And the year 11s love to see their name up there. So you can see I've got 3 different academies there, but AET English Stars, Evie, Mazama and Michael that day. And I just looked through to see who's doing exactly what I want and making sure that I had them really visible during the session. But also just think about, whole school recognition, messages to parents. What rewards can you give them for actually joining in? And obviously the reward should be that the learning has taken place, but really give them some recognition. This is new to them. They're used to talking on FaceTime, but if you see kids talking on FaceTime, they don't actually talk. They sort of have FaceTime on in the background as if they're in a room together, as if you would sort of sit with your friends together. So it's not the same thing to them as actually being expected to do something specific. So keep that in mind. Also, this is when I was talking about the modelling, this is the sort of thing that I'd show them. So I've videoed myself doing a question that it's not the same question, but it's a similar question. So the expectations that I'm modelling here is how they would annotate the text first and how they would underline the examples in the question. And then obviously I'll go on to write the question. So it's speeded up, but they see what I expect them to produce on their own model response when that finally gets handed in. So think about using a similar task. You can model the amount of work, the quality of work, and making sure that you make it really clear. So show the best examples from previous lessons as well. So when the students do work that models exactly what you're looking for, show the rest of the students. You don't have to tell them who did it. You don't have to use their name, but have it really visible. This is the expectation. So if you just tell them, I expect this, 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 and this, and they're being distracted by the cat over in the corner, by the time they come back to the screen, they've forgotten what your expectations are. So just make them really, really clear. Right, issue. I end up talking too much, which I'm doing on here, aren't I? But hopefully it's hopefully some useful ideas, if not all of them, some of them. How might we ensure that students are clear on exactly what's being asked of them, but also the issue is that I end up talking too much. And it happens because you're talking at a computer, right? I can see your faces over here on this computer and some people's circles. I can see your comments, but it's still just me in a room. And one way that I overcame this in the lessons was thinking really carefully about what was happening and when. And for some people, this might be overkill. But if you do feel like you talk too much and you're not sure when to stop talking, I actually storyboarded these lessons to think about how much time is an activity going to take? What am I actually doing? What is the student actually doing? For me, I also needed to know what tech I was using as well, because I had quite a bit going on, and what was actually visible on the screen at the same time. So I was trying to think about making quite a dynamic lesson. So it wasn't just a floating head. Thinking about a dynamic lesson where students are doing something specific and not just listening. And so it wasn't all about me. So you can see there I've got 3 minutes, which slides I'm showing and what I'm doing. So I'm introducing and preparing the students. The student response there was just listening, preparing, switching to mute, gathering resources. And the tech I needed was screen sharing camera. So quite simple. But as we move down, I've made sure the students are actually doing something at regular intervals. So for this lesson, it was asking which fairy tales they remember from growing up to test the comment section. And in the student response, the students are actually typing their comments to the fairy tale that they can remember. And all I needed there was the camera. So think about if you feel like in your lessons, you're not quite sure how to transition. Think about a really simple storyboard. I stopped using a storyboard probably about a week into the lessons because I started to get used to the type of things that students were going to be doing and I was going to be doing. And it became much more natural, much more like a lesson that I would have in the classroom, where naturally I am aware if I'm talking too much and I am aware what the students are doing. But an idea. All right. Think about when you're asking them to do longer reading or you're asking them to do something independent. The students can become quite passive, especially if you're the person doing the read through. So the students can quite quickly become dependent. And so for me, I need students to be confident in reading longer texts. And the reason I need them to do that is, one, because I want them to be confident readers, and two, because they have to be able to read a long text in the exam, and they have to be able to do that independently without any support. So if I sit and read through all of the text, then what they learn is I'll just wait for Miss to read it through. They're not reading it through for themselves. So all I did was think about, right, what can I get them to really do? Or how can I keep them active when we're reading? So I came up with this just asking questions as they read, expecting them to read along without any direction, got lots of what am I supposed to be doing. So by introducing something that they would do every time that they were reading, which was just basically read through and ask who, what, where, when, how, and why, but they should comment as they find those answers as well, kept them active and stopped me being the person that was reading all of the time. So, history teachers or geography teachers or any teachers that need to read through longer text or expect the students to do it for themselves, think about not just them reading it, because they could just be waiting for you to give them the answers. Think about keeping them active as they're reading it at the same time. So think about having some sort of input as well, almost like the question in the classroom, what did you find out from there? But keeping them so that they don't just switch off and wait for you to get the right answer. Right, issue, as I am today, just a floating head in a very empty room. How can you keep the learning experience dynamic and purposeful at the same time? So I want to show you a little bit of my setup here. This was the main view that students had. So it is in this room here, and I chose this particular part of the room because it's white, it's blank, and the students are not really coming into my house. It became my classroom. You can see that I had the board behind me just here, and that board was really useful because I would keep, if you can see there, I've got planning that we'd done in previous lessons. So I used the board as a link to previous lessons that I could draw upon and pull back out. But I also had visible throughout the lesson the stars as well. So really using that as positivity. I found an old projector and I projected. I could not work out how to change the projector, and it wasn't particularly good visibility, especially if they were looking on phones. But I found the projector and just displayed what we were doing in this lesson at the back. And again, it gave a bit more of a classroom feel to it. That made me feel so much more comfortable because it was almost like I was stepping into my classroom. And I don't have an office. I have a dining room table and a blank wall. So I tried to make the best of the space that I had. This is the main view that they had of me. This is what I was trying to avoid. So we were getting a lot of this at the time of people's bookshelves. And I know when I can see into somebody's house, I get distracted because I'm looking to see what's on their mantelpiece. Can I pick anything up that they haven't spotted? So if they've got a mirror, can I see something in the mirror that they don't know that's happening? And that's just the naughty side. And if I'm going to be doing that, your students are definitely going to be doing that. So even if it's just like a picture in the background, it could be distracting. So try and make everything if you can, try and make everything in your area, if you're working from home, to feel like a classroom online. So that was mine. And I was also thinking about in that, when I was doing the, what do you call it? The time thing anyway. What exactly can the students see? So the students could see me and they could see the PowerPoint. They could also have this full screen visualizer modeling. So it was quite powerful to come in and out of different screens. And the visualizer was such a powerful tool to be able to do this modeling as well. So remember, I was saying what we did in the lesson was create model examples, which they then went on to produce their own versions of. When I had the full screen visualizer modeling on, they could really clearly see what I was creating. And their job was to copy everything exactly and to ask questions if they didn't understand. So I'd planned everything beforehand, so I knew exactly what I was putting down there, down to spellings, because I get really nervous about spelling when I'm live online. But for them, what they were coming in between my classroom and my visualizer, making it a bit more dynamic. So thinking about using embedded videos as well. So you can see in this PowerPoint, I've embedded videos. There was a real quick time saver for me if I had, or it stopped me from getting stuck as I am now and forgetting words. If I was doing a particularly tricky thing that I wanted to model, I could just video that first and embed that in the PowerPoint. So I could actually sit back, allow that to run, let me think about the next steps of the lesson and where that's going. One thing that I found was if I tried to just use my mic from the laptop, that didn't work to play PowerPoint, and I couldn't fix that issue until I got a Jabra speaker. So really useful little bit of tech, and that's just really solved any sound issues that I had. So embedding videos in PowerPoints, look out for that as an issue where it doesn't play the sound, and that's how I fixed it. But embedding videos can really help. This is my setup. So I have got the webcam up above, which I haven't got on today, so you can see the double chins. Not absolutely necessary, but it helped me to really think about the space that I was using, and I could move that around as well. You can see I've got the two laptops. The two laptops really useful because I could look at the comments at the same time as presenting, which in Google Hangouts, it's just not easy to be able to present and look at the comments. As soon as I stopped sharing, then I would forget how to share. I'd forget to share again. Things got messy, and this just really solved it for me. You don't need two laptops. You could even just use your phone and the laptop, and all you have to do is just log in as the same person. Make sure your sound's turned off on one of them, or else you just get an echo reverberating around. You can see there we got the Jabra speaker, which I showed you there. This is a really useful thing to have as well. So just, I think these are quite cheap on Amazon, but you can see I can, if I want, make notes on the screen using this. It took me a little while to work out how to write and the writing actually looked like writing, but just a little drawing pad. I think you can do the same thing with Apple products. So Apple iPads, but my husband won't let me have one. He says they're the devil for some reason. This, most useful for modeling. So visualizer. I use the iPivo one, and you can see it's set up on some books there, just trying to find your perfect setup for that. And then if you can leave it there, brilliant. So you can see in the background, you know, loads of stuff going on sitting in my dining room, but actually what the students can see is quite professional looking. Up here on the wall, I've got everything that I'm about to do in that lesson written out already. So it can be quite time consuming to do that. But for me, it just made me feel so much more comfortable when I was in the lesson itself. So if I'm going to write them a plan, I've already done the plan. But for them, it looks like it's the first time I've ever done it. So when you see when I'm presenting the lesson, I'm like, oh, I've got an idea. I wonder if. But the reality is it's up there written on my wall already. I would do that in lessons too, because I just feel like, you know, in those moments we do get a little bit stuck. So for me, that was really useful having them up on the wall. I've got my really important notes there. So I'm going from this transition to this transition. And you can see I've got my projector as well. Now, in reality, all you need to deliver live lessons well is a laptop, a decent internet connection, and a space to work in. As the schools are back open and colleges are back open, you know, I think probably for some people the best place to work in would be in their own classroom, but not always. But that's what all you really need. Nice to have would be that extra laptop, If your schools would invest in them, a drawing tablet. The webcam just really helps you to set up that space. The visualizer, absolutely invaluable, and play about with it as well. So you get the right distance away from it so that students can see. I did a lot of, before we started the lessons, I think I had a week before we started the live lessons to just prepare. And I did a lot of in Google Hangout, as Wayne is doing with this session. You can record yourself. And if you press record, the recording will then go straight into your inbox. So if you set yourself up a little Google Meet, that recording goes straight into your inbox and you can watch it back. So I found when I first started using the visualizer, that it was back to front on this screen. So I was really panicked that the students were seeing it back to front. When I recorded myself and watched it back, it wasn't back to front. It was just my screen here. So by watching yourself back, you get over things like, I've got a stupid voice, which is something that you just think, oh my God, I'm going to sound really ridiculous when I'm online. You will sound like you. You can't help sounding like you. But it got me used to the fact that I was presenting. So recording yourself, I would recommend it. It's hard to watch, but it's useful to see what the students can see. Projector, nice to have just because it set the space. And the flip chart, again, you could do your modeling on the flip chart and make it feel a little bit more like a classroom. So I can see Helen and I can see Rachel, I can see your faces. So hello, thank you for having your cameras switched on over there. I've been told to keep it to around about 45 minutes. Now, I don't want to talk and talk and talk at you. So that is some of the big things that I've learned. And I would like to go to any questions that you've got for me. So I recognize that my situation is not your situation. You will be doing things differently. I was using Google Meets. I had students whose faces I could not see. I was using the comments over here, and so that's what my setup was. If you've got questions specifically about your setup, fire them over, and I will do my best to answer them. And I thought Neil was straight in there with a question, so I was buzzing, but he's not. He's just saying yes. Extra monitors are very helpful. Schools and colleges might have some cast-offs that you can get a hold of. So that's a really good point from Neil there. Any questions from anybody?
I think you covered everything so well there, Lisa, and answered so many different questions and so many different thoughts to consider. I think you've left people with very few areas where they could actually explore a little bit further. As I said earlier, I'm dipping between the two sessions, but I've spent 95% on your session and maybe 5% on the other session, and I've learned so much from you. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me along. Like I said, I am not a digital teacher. I am really not. I am all about being in the classroom, being in the classroom with the kids. And thank goodness I'm back there at the moment. So I do get nervous about the idea of presenting at a digital conference where I'm thinking everybody knows this stuff already. But I feel like I feel really confident as an online teacher now, as an online teacher, not an online presenter. Can I make that little caveat? But when I'm teaching my students now, I feel really confident, and I feel like going from where I was at the beginning, where I said, no, I absolutely do not want to do those live lessons, to where I am now, where I really quite look forward to planning and delivering the live lessons. If I can do it, I think anybody can. So there's a problem that I feel like I've solved.
Yeah, I think you mentioned somewhere about making mistakes and just working through those mistakes and not concentrating too much about them. And you mentioned about voice and presentation and what you being overly worried about what you look like online. And really, you're using exactly the same voice that you would be using in the classroom. You're using exactly the same hair that you'd be in the classroom with. And it is about getting you over yourself in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying there about how much training did you have? You have no idea where to start, Helen. We had myself, a maths teacher, and sort of the head of curriculum. We sort of sat together and just worked it out between us rather than it being specific training. So my training really came from sitting with Google Meets open by myself, press and record, playing the recording back and seeing what that looked like. And then, you know, just trying things with like, how do I present? Right, I'm going to practice that a little bit. You know, just being able to present a screen and then come back. And then I would be like, right, now I can present. Now I'm going to move over to the visualizer and try that. So in the end, it looked like this really beautiful polished product, but actually the amount of time that I spent just clicking buttons was unreal. So I'd say if you don't know where to start, Helen, I would say just start by videoing yourself in Google Meets and like trying to present a lesson that you would maybe do live and seeing what that looks like and not worrying because nobody else will see it but you as well.
This is a participation sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you're not going to practice, then you're not going to get good at it. And you do have to practice in your own time. You do have to play in your own time, like you say, an experiment.
And if you would like any kind of tips beyond this session, I am moving house at the minute, so I probably won't get back to you quick. But you can contact me on Twitter. Quite happy to help with little bits and pieces. I have always got the time to do that. So, you know, if you are messing about with it and you just think, oh, Lisa might know the answer to that, just ping me a message. So it's just at Lisa Jane Ashes. Always happy to help with that.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Right, if nobody's got any more questions, then I'll draw this to a close. I think this is really valuable to a lot of people, and yes. I'm sure it'll be one of those that when we do put this out, it'll be watched several times. So if you are having issues, don't forget, then as Lisa said, by all means, get in touch with Lisa, get in touch with me, get in touch with the DFE EdTech Demonstrator Schools and Colleges program, who can help you with a lot of this training. And but thank you very much, Lisa. I hope it doesn't take so long for us to meet in person again.
Absolutely. Always shout, Wayne. Always shout up.
Good. Nice. Thank you. And thank you very much, everybody, for turning up. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, I'll just stop recording.